Could you use one of these bike wheels to replace your flat trailer tire? Was this scientific? Probably not. So picture this, you're heading to camp for the weekend, you got your bikes on the back of the truck, all your gear on the trailer, and suddenly you find yourself with a flat tire. So this seems like an intractable situation. But then you think of the bikes on the back of the truck and wonder, could you use one of these bike wheels to replace your flat trailer tire? We're gonna find that out today with help from my buddies Sean and Chad and my buddy Chris behind the wheel. So for this video, we really wanted to test out putting a bike tire on someone's vehicle, but I wasn't willing to use my own vehicle, and Chris didn't want to use his truck. We thought about using a U-Haul, but maybe thought that was morally dubious. Instead of putting it on Chris's truck, Chris volunteered to tow this trailer around, and we're gonna put the bike tires on there and load it up with all sorts of weight and see how much we can do with the trailer on bike tires before anything fails. I think the situation we're presenting here is plausible. Maybe not probable, but definitely plausible. Clearly, this would be very hard to do in the field. The axle's the wrong size, nothing's gonna match up nice. So I've taken some liberties here and made an axle for this trailer that holds mountain bike wheels instead of regular trailer wheels. So this is pretty simple. It's not rocket surgery. Under the flatbed of our trailer, we have an axle with a wheel and a tire on each side. The trailer itself is connected by springs to the axle. Now on the end of each axle, there's a bearing surface, some threads, and then the bearing itself, which sits inside the wheel and gets held on to the bearing surface using the axle nut. We're going to use a piece of black iron pipe to make a new axle, add a plate to the end, and a grade 8 bolt with a 15mm diameter shaft that'll slide inside a 15mm through axle bike hub. These will all be welded together. Let's get to building. First, I'm going to cut the new axle to length with my bandsaw. This is just a piece of black iron pipe that's about the same diameter as the original axle, which will make it easy to use all the same hardware that already comes with the trailer. I'm measuring the axle out to 60 inches, which is a bit wider than the original axle. This will give those bike wheels a bit of room to flex and keep on rotating. Now I'm just using an angle grinder to clean the mill scale off the steel plate that I'm going to weld the bolt to. Here I'm cutting the steel plate with my bandsaw, and then adding a chamfer to the end of the axle to make it easier to weld. I'm tacking the steel plate to the end of the axle, lining it up as squarely as possible, checking to make sure the weld looks good.
Decent.
Then we're going to finish that with a solid bead all the way around before attaching the axle/bolt. At this point, I was thinking that the weld between the bolt and the plate would most certainly be our point of failure. However, notice the discoloration on the bolt. The grade 8 hardened bolt has been softened by the heat of my weld, and this will come into play later in the video. Tests fit, and it's all going together like a charm. The next step was building the trailer. This stout little 4x8 utility hauler comes in a box from Harbor Freight, and if you're lucky, you get the right instructions and the right parts in the box. Okay, they definitely gave me the wrong parts for this trailer. It's kind of like a mismatched Lego set. Don't worry, with a little bit of improvisation, we got it all together, minus a few bolts. Okay, so for our test wheel set, we're gonna have 2 Stans Flow Mark IV front wheels. One of them will have an insert. Continental, Crip Total, Enduro tires. Not sure what casing, I can never remember here, there's too many, and some stand sealant. Ready to go. Replacing the original axle with the one I built was as easy as removing 4 U-bolts and setting it in place. All right, so we've got the mountain bike axle here on the trailer. Gotta put the wheels on. I think it looks better than the original, to be honest. I'd rather roll up with this thing. Bike wheel trailer tires are set up. We're gonna hook this thing up, head out on the off-road loop, see what she does. Wait. Empty, the trailer weighs about 300 pounds, and although that's not a lot, it is more than your average cyclist. Quick high-speed corner test, managed to burp some of the sealant out of the tire and get some grass stuck in there. We also, I think, bent the rim a bit, but that was very excessive high-speed off-road driving. We're gonna air it back up to proper pressure, and then we'll see if we can complete our off-road course without any more casualties before we add a lot of weight. Given the fact that there's really no suspension here and the wheels are experiencing significant side loading, I did expect the results from this empty test to be a bit more dramatic. However, it really surprised me. The wheels held up quite well, even around the corners. All right, so we completed our off-road course with the empty trailer. We have one more feature to test it out, that is the log feature, and then we're gonna add some weight. For our log test, we're using a metal pipe to simulate an obstacle in the road. Chris is going to clear the log with the truck and then give it some gas so the trailer hits the obstacle at a decent speed. Okay, let's pause because this is the cool part. When the moving wheel contacts the pipe, all the force is directed perpendicular directly into the surface of the rim. Keep in mind, the spokes are in tension, so the spokes are pulling that side of the rim in the same direction as the pipe is pushing it. That means that the forces counteracting the impact are actually coming from the spokes on the other side of the rim. And the structure to withstand that impact comes from the construction of the hoop itself. All right, back to the episode. Trailer has a little bit of a twist to it, but the wheels are still going strong. Still holding together. I thought those bolts that I welded on would just shear off with an impact like that. And I thought the wheels would disintegrate by this point. Gonna add some weight to the trailer, see what comes next. Our next task is to get this 1,500-pound ship's anchor onto that trailer as a sort of high load test. Wow, that's heavy. Holy moly.
I'm a little worried about that.
How does something so small weigh that much? With the anchor on board, we finished securing it to the trailer for our next phase of testing. So the tire with the insert here, significantly better off than the tire over there, but it is flattened out. Oh, look at the crease on that. Oh man. Got some lean on it now. Time to see how well these bike tires do under 1,500 pounds of weight. Whoa. Yeah, the one on the right is not doing so hot. So going into this test, you could see immediately the axle and the wheel flexing anytime the trailer was a little bit off camber or had any side-loading forces on it going around a turn. A bit of creaking and groaning ensued as we completed the halfway mark on the course. I don't know about my weld. The bolt looks like it's hanging on for dear life. However, the setup held together over off-camber turns, sand, sticks, and lots of spiky plants. Just completed the off-road course with the 1,500-pound anchor on here. Even with 45 pounds of air in the tires, squished down pretty bad. Got a little bending happening on my welds here, but overall, it's still holding. I have a strong feeling that this is going to lead to failure. What do you think, Chris?
I'm gonna be scared to really goose it over this.
You gotta do the same for science.
It's all for science. Once this rear wheel makes it over, it's time to juice it. 1,500-pound anchor. There it is!
rim is not busted. Look, the tire just came off the beam. The rim is perfect. What? The rim is perfect. The tire just came off the beam. Dude.
Look at the other side.
The other side is a whole different story. This one's fine too.
Oh, wow.
And the tire stayed on.
It's the weld.
Oh, it's not even the weld, dude. The bolt bent.
Bolt bent, yep.
Wow. We did bust the spoke, but
I got the other side too.
dude, this is totally like this wheel is a little bit out. Dude, that's wild. At this point, our final planned test was complete, but nothing's failed yet, so of course we gotta keep pushing to see if we can get something to break.
Ooh, the tire's like completely off now.
That's fine. Dude, it's all stanced out. Look at that.
That is brutal.
The tire coming off completely is what it took to make this thing fail, huh? Like those harsh impacts. And still going.
This proves scientifically that inserts are worth the money.
Still fully inflated, dude. Didn't even lose any air. Wow. At this point, the trailer itself had seen better days. Weld held up just fine. The bolt bent right here. This is a grade 8 bolt, so most likely the heat from my welding undid any sort of hardening that would have kept this bolt really stiff. That's why it bent. But I am very surprised, pleasantly surprised, that all the welds held up. That's cool. Our tangled mess of the rim that didn't have the insert in it. RIP. On this side, the hub took a bit of a beating, but honestly still spins fine. You can get a new end cap and run this thing just fine. In conclusion, so would this setup work in a real-world application? Well, you know, if you found yourself in this situation, I think it would be very difficult to put bike wheels on your trailer in an emergency. However, if somehow you could MacGyver this to fit, I think this would get you out of a sticky situation. Now, I wouldn't go running down the highway, but using on a logging road, getting yourself kind of back into cell phone service from wherever you broke down, a great solution. I think this test was a really cool way to illustrate just how tough mountain bike components are and just probably modern cycling components in general. Also really cool to show the difference between inserts and no inserts in a rugged off-road situation where you have a lot of side loading and a lot of heavy impacts. It's clear that the inserts really make a difference. So, was this a failure? Well, it certainly failed in our more extreme testing, but overall I think it was a success. Could you actually do this in the real world? Probably not the solution you're looking for.